good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, which I know is an unusual day for us, but that's okay. We are going to have a great conversation today, which interestingly, compared to the weather outside, is going to be a great uplift for the day. So I'm very excited about this. My name is Stephanie Van Bark. I am a small business owner, and welcome to Talking Business. Our guest today, Terri Cooper Space, is the owner of Soul Yoga Academy. Actually, she's a serial entrepreneur. So we're really going to delve into that a little bit today. And I'm very excited to hear what she has to say about her day. We will bring her on. Welcome, 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 Terri.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Great to see you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Who are you and what do you do?
So I'm a yoga teacher. I love to help people heal themselves by doing deep inner work around social emotional learning and trauma healing through mind-body practices. And as you said in the intro, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love to get my business on and to combine my passion for helping people and really being of service to the community with also supporting my family and living my best life. So
very cool. So tell me, we talked a little bit before this. I sort of shared with you that I was very intrigued by the idea with the pandemic that the health and wellness industry pounced on this online industry. It was actually very impressive, and everybody else sort of followed behind. Were you one of the early adopters, and have you found it to be a lucrative part of your business?
You know, I was very lucky that I had all of my equipment, my cameras, my lights, I had everything before the pandemic hit because I was already teaching online courses and mindfulness-based classes and using Zoom once a week with my staff that's spread across the country for my nonprofit. So I was ready to go. And come March, as I was telling you earlier, I was coughing in March. I have allergies that were kicking in March really bad, but it just was unsafe and inappropriate to be out and coughing in the world. And I couldn't be teaching yoga in my yoga studio with 20, 30 people in the room and be coughing. So I pulled myself out of the space, even though we stayed open and my teachers and staff and amazing managers continued to teach on site until we were legally required to close. And I bumped online myself because I felt fine, but I was coughing. It was just allergies. And I moved online and, Stephanie, I had 75 people join my first online class.
And were they all people from your studio or did you find a new audience?
I've owned 305 Yoga here in Miami for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I also founded and run a nonprofit organization called Connection Coalition. And we teach trauma-informed mindfulness programs. And right before COVID, we were in 26 states. So I've got a large national community. So It was my Miami folks. The 305 people were definitely showing up. And other folks who were starting, like they themselves were maybe vulnerable. And we're just making smart decisions to stay in earlier, as well as our national community. We're growing into some new audience, but really, it's a tough world out there. It's a very competitive industry.
Absolutely.
And so, to be super transparent, I'm not even trying to grow. I'm just trying to keep us together.
So, how are you pricing? Before when you had this on site, there was a widget of sort. How are you now defending pricing on an online platform?
Yeah, so we did lower our pricing for our online platform. I mean, it was $25,000 a month to run the yoga studio. Our rent was $7,000 a month, and with social distancing, it just would never work. Absolutely impossible. And one of our core values within our organizations is accessibility and inclusion. And so we were able to drop the price. Many of our community members are out of work and they lost their jobs and so it didn't make sense to keep the prices when our overhead was very different. So I was able to drop the price considerably. And that being said, we're staying afloat, but I'm not chilling at home making money, just popping in the bank. We're in the hustle, and that's okay, right? Because with every business, there's going to be ups and downs.
Absolutely.
And it's been a tough one.
So you talk about people who are unemployed. Are you encountering that where clients are now dropping off just because of the income? And this is one of those areas that is sort of the first to go. Are you finding that in a huge wave or sort of one at a time?
The yoga and wellness community, as I'm sure you're quite aware, is predominantly upper middle class anyway. It was always a luxury experience to begin with, which is really sad because it is our mental and emotional well-being and our physical well-being. It shouldn't be a luxury. Everyone needs and deserves self-regulation. We know that there is a direct tie between stress and disease or dis-ease. And so through our nonprofit, that's what we do. We specialize in really creating access and making sure that that anyone and everyone who needs the yoga and the wellness can get it. Through the for-profit business angle, some of our clients have needed to shift into other avenues. The good thing is there is so much free, accessible mindfulness and yoga that's on the internet already. So I feel like more people are getting what they need. And then I'm really hoping that, the people who can stay with us and continue to pay will continue to do so because we've got relationships. And, there are some people who've been with me 15 years. And the very first thing I say, like, hi, everybody, welcome to class. Please come onto your mat. Just hearing the tone of my voice will immediately initiate a nervous system response that sends them into rest and renew. So they're not willing to give up their local teachers that they've built a relationship with.
So do you feel like this is the wave of the future for this industry? That, there is going to continue to be this fusion inclusion aspect, that this is the new normal for your industry?
I hope that there's more fusion and inclusion, especially when it comes to demographic and culture, race. We're deeply diving into deeper conversations around social justice, around cultural appropriation. Here I am, white woman teaching yoga, which is a Southeast Asian philosophy. So we're doing some really deep work within our own organizations and within ourselves to continue to unpack the colonialism of the wellness community and the whiteness of the yoga community. And I think that the online's not going to go anywhere. We look forward to getting back in studios. We want to be together. You work so much harder when you're in the room. You get your sweat on a little bit more when you're in the room. But, we're feeling really blessed and honored, and people are feeling safe at home. And we're so lucky that we get to continue to do what we do. So I want to keep both. I want to stay online, and I certainly hope that we'll be back together again soon.
Now, I did a little research on the wellness community, the wellness industry. It was very actually interesting. I said before, this is one of those industries that quite frankly snuck up on me. Like, you woke up one day and you're like, wow, this is a $1 trillion industry. And I even found there's everything from yoga to, I think there's a death doula, birth doula, just a wealth of, even fashion falls under wellness. What are your streams of income? And do you feel like the impact we're experiencing today will have an effect on that growth?
I do. So for me, when we were at the yoga studio, we had 5 streams of revenue, from boutique to workshops, memberships, regular classes. And then we also hold yoga teacher training certification, which that's the only real profitable revenue stream. The general classes are just enough to keep you afloat, even now, to cover our software and our advertising expenses, the memberships and the daily classes. They just keep us alive. There's no profit there. So as always within this industry, the only real revenue generating stream is the certifications and the teacher trainings. And even that is really challenging. You know, a typical yoga teacher training, and we have always offered scholarship opportunities and done our very best to make it accessible. Always, in the whole 15 years, we always have offered scholarship opportunities. That being said, these trainings are expensive. It is $2,000 to become a certified yoga teacher, 200 hours of intense study. These are life-changing, transformative practices. Your body will never feel so good as you do during a yoga teacher training, but we also dive deep into the philosophy and the mindfulness of what yoga offers. And now there are online yoga schools that are just doing pre-recorded classes and selling the same teacher, like a teacher training. They're claiming to certify yoga teachers for $300. So it really is undercutting the value of our trade. And frankly, I'm a trauma-informed yoga teacher. Hundreds of hours of trauma training. You know, we're talking about people's bodies, and our bodies have been through some stuff. And we hold our emotions, our issues are in our tissues. And so, you know, any old yoga teacher that you're going to find at any old gym is really not equipped to deal with the mind-body relationship of what really can come up. These are vulnerable experiences. And when you move your body, very often trapped energy from a previous wound or emotional trauma gets released and comes up. And so often people have big emotional responses, and these $300 trained yoga teachers are just, it's not safe and they're not equipped. And the other thing I want to add to that is, you know, having therapeutic alignment that is accessible for all bodies, not just the young and the fit and the, you know, thin and the bendy, but for regular people to be able to move their body in a healthy way. So, you know, we just try to keep bringing the best quality and the best teachers that we can.
And it's interesting you say that, because I've always told someone whenever I'm going through a stressful situation, it always shows up in my skin. I always have challenges in my skin. So I completely agree with you when you say it shows up in your body some way. So how do you, when you market, how do you differentiate yourself? Because I can only imagine there are people out there doing it for, you know, $200, and you're trying to do something a little bit bigger, more bolder, more experienced. How are you able to market in a way that really attracts people to you versus this sort of online quickie experience?
Ooh, that's a good question. I am working that out. You know, one of the things when I became a yoga teacher in 2003, and I really studied and immersed myself into my art, into my craft. And when I start to learn something, I really throw myself in, you know, and just wrap myself around the content. And, you know, then when I became a studio owner and a nonprofit founder, I studied business. And now I'm studying digital marketing.
Okay.
It's about always continuing to increase my tools and increase my own knowledge, and, you know, being flexible. And I don't mean touching my toes flexible. I mean being flexible within the realm of being a business owner and entrepreneur, that I'm going to continue to adapt and learn and try to stay up with what's happening.
Okay. And so in the past, I know that the pandemic has shown a light on the need for the pivot plan, but have you had a pivot plan in the past? Have there been experiences where you've had to flip on a dime?
Yes, so many. In the 15 years that I owned my studio, we moved 3 times. Each time was a build out, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000. So saving for a year to be able to move. In 2008, I had to choose between my home, my condo that I owned, when the market crashed, and I had one of those loans. I had one of those awful loans. And my balloon was going up, and my 1-bedroom little tiny condo was about to be $4,000 a month. And I had to choose whether I was going to keep my yoga studio, my business that was barely paying me,
Right.
or if I was going to keep my home. And, I opted I foreclosed on my home just to keep the studio open. And it was the best thing I ever did for the business, though. I was able to live in that apartment because, the banks were so backed up that so many of us who had stopped paying and were in the foreclosure process, I still lived there for like 8 months without paying any rent or mortgage.
Right.
And I just stacked that money. I didn't pay myself. I just stacked that money and I invested it back in my business.
Okay.
And by the following year, the business was able to pay me a full-time salary. So it was like, that was a huge pivot and a scary one and a difficult one.
And a risky one. That's that's the art of entrepreneurship. And I think you tapped it right on the head of, it's not always an upward trajectory. There are a lot of hard, fast, crazy decisions you have to make along the way to do this. And so, I often ask, do you feel like everyone can be an entrepreneur, or is it in the DNA, or just we're all slightly crazy? Like, so, yeah.
I love that. It isn't for everybody. The level of risk, you have to be able to deal with risk day in and day out. And, it just isn't for everyone. And that's a beautiful thing, though. I have the most incredible team of managers and staff that have worked for me over the years. And some have stayed a really long time and some have moved on to do different projects. But I wouldn't be able to run my businesses without these incredible people. And they are at their best when they don't have to carry the financial responsibility. And they just get to do what they do really well. So I'm glad that there's so many different types of people. And I think the art of entrepreneurship is finding your team and finding your people that you can trust and who are smart. And, I hire people who are smarter than me when I can. And we build, and I think one of the most important things too that has really set me apart is their families and their wellness are going to come first. So when one of my staff members, their kid is sick, they got to take off.
Handle it. Yes.
Go take care of your kid, and we're not going to dock your pay. And and then when my kid is sick, they're going to cover for me. And so I feel like it's about really taking care of each other. And when we're small businesses like that, I feel like we get to do that more than a corporation would.
And everybody seems invested.
That's right.
So as I mentioned earlier, you're a serial entrepreneur. So you yourself talked about Soul Shine Academy, which is a for-profit, the Connection Coalition. Tell me what your day is like. That's got to be just...
Well, I have a 5-year-old daughter who just went back to school downtown Miami, iPrep Academy. So I was not getting much done. I was not very productive the first few months of this school year because my husband works full time. Very lucky that there are two of us to be able to engage and raise this child. What a privilege that is. And so I was just in the hustle of like trying to fit in a conference call in between. But now that she's in school, I teach in the mornings, usually meet with my staff in the afternoon, work on my marketing plan, film a couple videos, and then it's time to scoop the kid again. And, the balancing of being a parent and an entrepreneur, it changed everything. Before I was a parent and before I had my husband, my partner, I worked 12-hour days and I loved it. I was in the hustle because I love what I do and I love my community and I'm ambitious and, creative and really inspired by my work. And then, moving into the family life, as women, yes, we can have it all. And I want to be realistic with what that means. I cannot work 12-hour days anymore, nor do I want to. So it's forced me to really get a lot more potent with my time. And I say no to a lot of stuff now that I would have never said no to before. I find that a struggle with women because as I forgot to mention, we're still in the middle of Women's Small Business Month. So many of the women that have been on this show have talked a lot about time management. So it is a struggle every day. It is.
So what made you decide to go into both a for-profit and a nonprofit realm?
Well, my own personal story is a bit of a shady one, to be honest. Like, I was a lot of childhood trauma in my own life. By the time I was an adolescence and into my young adult life, I was acting out in all kinds of inappropriate ways, lots of self-harm, living on South Beach and dancing on bar tops and partying till the wee hours of the morning, and just suffering from anxiety and depression, and really found myself to be suicidal. And I was very lucky to have like a rock bottom moment. At the end, I was a 3-year crystal meth addict,
Oh,
which
wow.
is almost impossible to come back from. But I had this rock bottom moment and this big aha. And in that aha, it came to me that like, I can change my life. I've got to change my life. I was 28 years old, failed out of college, got nothing. I was a bartender, no skills, no education. A little bit white trash. I'm from Virginia, Ohio. And, I had all this upbringing stuff that was baggage on my back. And I found yoga. I was able to change my life. It was a transformative practice. Yoga is a trauma healing practice. And when I threw myself into yoga teacher training, only 3 months out of being clean off crystal meth, I was the craziest girl in that yoga teacher training. If you had asked anybody who was the least likely to actually make a career at this, I'd have been like, that crazy girl right there. She is never going to make it, because I was such a hot mess. But this practice transforms, and it transformed me, and it allowed me to heal. And I immediately knew that I wanted to serve other people and other kids like myself, kids who had suffered from so much trauma and that didn't have the tools or the resources to regulate their emotions, to regulate their nervous system. When we're dysregulated, we're impulsive, aggressive, reactive. But when we can regulate our nervous system, which once you know how to do it, it's free and it can happen at any time. It's this incredible tool. So I founded my nonprofit and I began teaching yoga in what is now Wynwood, but back then it was just Miami.
Right.
I lived right there because I lived in Miami. And
there's probably a different rate right now too in terms of cost.
Completely different. But there was a nonprofit there, and they were working with women in recovery. And all of the women were actually in residential treatment program at the Village Drug Treatment Center on Biscayne and 30th. And they were going into this nonprofit in Wynwood that was giving them, AA classes and rehabilitation, and they were getting job skills training. And I would go in once a week and teach them yoga. And the class just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I thought that it was just more women in the program, getting into the program. And it found out about 3 weeks in that some of the women who, again, were going through their court-ordered programming, that they were inviting their cousin, their sister, their auntie, their best friend to come and do this yoga class with this crazy white girl, and it was outside and it was hot and it was like the worst conditions. And it was the most beautiful experience. And from there, I started teaching in the juvenile detention center and the Miami Bridge. And, it was really, it's always been about trying to bridge this gap between those who have access to this incredible resource and those who don't. And then when it was time for me to leave the bar and no longer be a bartender, I decided to open a yoga studio, and I didn't even pay myself for the first 7 years. But
among entrepreneurs, by the way.
That's right. But over the years it grew, and until eventually it was something that could sustain me.
So when you were thinking about doing this Connection Coalition, as you mentioned earlier, you're in 26 states. Was that a strategic plan, or was that an opportunity that opened up for you? And what was the strategic plan to get to 26 states?
We had no idea. I never in a million years thought that would be what it ended up becoming. I was introduced to the science of trauma and how it relates to the mind-body connection by my teachers. And so I was getting so many requests for programming here in Miami that I couldn't keep up with it. I needed to train some other people to do what I was doing. And I had plenty of people who wanted to do that through my yoga teacher trainings. Everyone, like, my training is about service and community. And so, it's not a bunch of skinny girls in bra tops looking at themselves in mirrors. We don't even have mirrors in my yoga studio. This is deep personal work. And so part of it was, you got to be of service or you can't graduate.
Right.
So I had all these people wanting to do it. So I developed a curriculum that was this trauma-informed outreach training, how to bring mind-body practices into communities that really need it. And the training I was doing just here in Miami for like 8 years, and people were flying in from all across the country to do this training with us. And then we started getting requests at other yoga studios and other education institutes. And it just organically grew. I never planned it or saw it coming, and was really blessed and privileged to have such smart people on my team that saw that this was a resource the community needs, and B, an opportunity to scale. And so I trained in some other facilitators, and it's our trauma-informed training that was in 26 states, and in universities, in nonprofits, in yoga studios. And with COVID, we canceled, like 32 trainings got canceled. And right now we're just on pause, trying to breathe. And each of my staff are trying to ground their own families and their own resources financially. And we hope to pivot and get this online as well. But we're taking a backseat on that for a minute, so that each of our team members can get themselves grounded first.
Right. So what is your thought around, there's been a lot of conversation around the policing, and it's a powerful conversation, and this need to incorporate health and wellness both in the training as well as how it is to be an active participant in policing. What's your thoughts around that? And do you think that's an opportunity for an organization like yours?
I would bend over backwards and do cartwheels if I had the opportunity to work with first responders, and particularly the police officers themselves. I think one of the things that is very likely missing from their education is a trauma-informed approach. And again, we have the science. It is evidence-based that mind-body practices regulate the nervous system. What we're seeing, especially when we're looking at all of these unarmed Black folks being killed by officers, is those officers are having a trauma response themselves. They are in a fight or flight state. And when you're in a fight or flight, you are not making good decisions.
Right. I agree.
Period.
I agree.
So I really hope, while I'm a supporter of the defund police, I think we should not have police officers showing up to mental health crises. One area I do think we need to take maybe let's take away some tanks and some of the militarized weapons and put it into mental health and into more trauma-informed training for our officers.
I agree. I think some of those things just could accelerate because nobody knows how to manage their emotions during that time.
That's right.
And I think it's a very interesting opportunity, absolutely, once they sort of really get their heads around it. But I don't think we'll get to that until we get past the election. That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. That's a whole nother show. So how do you set up your pricing? I mean, what was the thinking behind how that works?
Yeah. So when we had our actual yoga studio, we were the lowest priced yoga studio in all of the Tri-County area. My business model was, every year, the more we grew, the more I lowered the prices.
Wow.
So that I'd rather have a lot of people paying a little bit of money coming and getting their yoga on than 12 wealthy people coming in and getting their yoga on for this premium. We were never an exclusive or a premium place. We're in a space of inclusion. So many people who work in social services and nonprofits, educators were members of our community. Okay. And so that's still my philosophy. While we can't compete with the pricing of, these big national yoga corporate. I mean, that's a whole conversation in its own of the corporatization and the capitalization of our industry compared to us mom and pops trying to do our thing. That, we can't even compete with that, but we still pride ourselves on having the most affordable pricing that we can. And again, we offer so many opportunities. Every time we have a teacher training group, we turn out these incredibly talented, new, inspired yoga teachers. We always offer free yoga for several weeks to months as they get in their internship. So, I want to make it as accessible as I can.
And so intentionally built into your model is this pricing strategy from the beginning.
That's right.
Very cool.
That's right.
Actually very cool. I think that's the first time I've ever heard anything like that. Let's see. The best method of distributing, you've said you're online, you would like to go back on site. Have you started to think about any other ways that you might want to really, any other parts of the industry you might want to get into, or any other ways you might want to really build and grow?
Sure. So, right now I am spending a lot of my time and focus on an online course that I have coming up in January. My specialty is chakras, the energy centers of the body. And the chakras is just yoga's way of talking about psychology and trauma. And that's my jam. I've been studying that for 17 years. So right now I'm really developing and building a broader community outside of my local community, and even outside of my nonprofits community, with a global community through a Facebook group, a free Facebook group where I'm dropping all kinds of chakra wisdom, and we're having really deep and profound conversations about personal healing and wellness. And I'm utilizing that and about to launch my podcast about chakras as well, and gearing up for what I hope to be a really big launch. Mama needs to make some money. It has been a hard 8 months. I went eight months without a paycheck.
Wow. That's so, I mean, I guess, I don't even know how to put that into words. How do you rethink then in the future? Hopefully we'll never have another pandemic, but what is that engaging in your head that I've got to do things a little differently in preparation to what used to be, make sure you have 3 months of income in the bank to potentially 2 years of income in the bank.
So crazy. I'm very blessed and privileged. I sold a business asset 2 years ago for a significant amount of money, which was just, like one of those out of the blue, this blessed opportunity landed in my lap to liquidate some of the business assets. And for this significant chunk of money, my husband and I were about to invest it when the pandemic hit. Luckily, we had it. So that's how we've been living. We've been living off of that. It's such an interesting thing. Had I not done that, we'd probably be losing our house right now.
Yeah, that's and who would have thought? You know what I mean? That just was not in your purview. Yeah. So that's kind of why I like to talk to entrepreneurs, because this is an extreme scenario, but there are other scenarios you need to really think through as well that continues to make you pivot.
Well, and Stephanie, one thing about that whole story was after I sold the asset, I regretted it badly. I did, even though we made the money, I lost something that was so valuable to me emotionally and personally, and something that I had built and created. And, I had sold, it was my yoga studio. I had sold it, and my family moved to Guatemala. We had decided we were going to raise my daughter in Guatemala, and my mother-in-law got sick. And so we came right back to Miami. And then I had, given up this beautiful community that I had built. And, I own the studio again because life unfolds in really mysterious ways. But, I did not own it for about a year and a half. And in that time, I was so depressed. I was I just thought like I'd made the biggest mistake. And yes, I have this money and I've never had money in my life. All of a sudden I have some money in my bank account. I've never seen that before, but money did not buy my happiness. And I really missed the connection to my community and feeling like I was making a difference in the world and in my local community. And, my nonprofit was amazing, but it don't pay me.
Right.
So I was missing that piece of connection of I'm doing something I'm good at and that I love, and I'm earning an income that can support myself and my family. And that's so important.
Do you think you would have still felt that way were you still in Guatemala?
Probably not. I feel like, I had all of that worked out. Okay. Then maybe I would have, and Guatemala was hard. I ain't gonna lie. Guatemala was not easy. But it was, we risked it all. My husband and I both gave up everything. We risked it all. We gave up everything. And, doesn't everybody say, oh, I wish I could just, up and move, and I want to go and move. And we lived in this beautiful place, that was affordable to live with, epic volcano mountain views and right on this beautiful lake, and like one of the most beautiful places in the world, full of rich cultural history. And we were learning Spanish, doing all the things. And maybe I would have, I imagine that we would have created a brilliant life there, and we would have been thriving, and, my online business would have taken off then. But we came home and there I was 1 mile from my business that I just sold, feeling all
driving by every day,
crying in my living room.
Like, I never would have done that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can imagine.
Thankful for a good therapist.
Exactly. Wellness. We all need wellness.
And the yoga and the breathing, it really helps.
Exactly. So how can we find you in the future?
Yeah. So folks interested can check out our website. We are soulshineyoga.academy. We offer monthly memberships, 14 classes a week, live via Zoom. Plus, we post the replay of all those classes, and we have an on-demand academy of classes that you can take at any time. So no matter where you are in the world, you can do that. We also offer a day pass for only $12. You can drop in and you get 24-hour access, which means you can take multiple classes and check it out. You can also learn more about Connection Coalition by going to theconnectioncoalition.org. And if you're into chakras or you're chakra curious, please check out the Ultimate Chakra Balancing group on Facebook.
Thank you very, very much. We've had several people, as you can see, who love you dearly, and who are shouting out to you, Yvette, Shantae, Malia, and Michelle Jamie, a friend of mine. So thank you for tuning in. This show will continue to run throughout the day on Facebook Live, on Facebook. And I thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I will say that's wellness, health and wellness. I'm very impressed with it. I will say I'm not a buff at it because, the idea of working out is very stressful for me, but I'm working on it. But thank you so much for sharing the business aspect of health and wellness. And, I'll definitely look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Stephanie, it's been such a pleasure. I'm going to send you a guest pass that you can just store in your inbox for whenever you're ready. Would love to have you be my guest for a class one day. I promise to take really good care of you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I'll share it with the audience for sure how the experience was.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. Have a great one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. So thank you everyone for tuning in again with us. This was a very interesting show for me, for sure. We are going to have on Tuesday, Nzinga Anawasan. I hope I said her name properly, but we'll know by Tuesday at 10 o'clock. So join us again here for Talking Business. She's another health and wellness expert. So we'd love to really be able to explore that as well, a little bit more, to see the experience, how it's grown, and how the business is a great opportunity for those who want to participate and maybe even delve into that industry as an entrepreneur. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Have a great weekend.